Yeah.
Yes.
לא יברא דינא דרחיץ עם עצם הדבר נסקלה לו בלוי סיפורי, וקטי יתקן האופן הזה ובוי מוסיף. If the story itself, he found out about it without, I'm not sure what this means. Let's see what we're talking about. Aleph, also Isur Achilles Wafilim in Megaloloi Dover Chodesh. You come and tell Yehuda that Shimon said something about him, and Yehuda knows about it. Shagam Hu Yoda, Yichein Bechein Dibur Pliny Odesav, that Shimon had said, such and such about him. Or also in Pliny who did such a thing. Like Rak. However, Shuba Atzmah is born at time to Zal Pliny. Shos Avla Bazeh. He didn't process it so much. He knew that it happened, but it wasn't on the top of his mind. He didn't think about much about it. But Roy more earlier said, but now when this Roychel comes and tells him how Shimon said about him, that makes him think about it. Keep going. For example, Shiyatz Reuven Chayev Bedin. There was a din Torah and Reuven came out Chayev. Upago Shimon. And he meets Shimon, V'shalom Yita, and Shimon asks him what happened. Manas b'din chaveishav Reuven. Reuven says, "Nischayavti kach v'kach." Yeah, I gotta pay. V'omle Shimon lo yafa donois. So Shimon says, "No, they didn't judge you correctly." Kahai gavna. Now Reuven knew that he was chayiv, right? But he didn't give any thought. Is it really? He didn't process the din. He accepted it, moved on. Now Shimon is coming and stoking the fire and saying, "1 minute, that's not a right din." I feel hochi rechilas mikri. It's still called rechilas. Because by him saying something, it brought something new here to the table. That he didn't have before him. He knew it happened, but he didn't act upon like in the case of the din. He accepted it and he moved on. Shimon is the one who's causing Reuven to be angry at the Dayan.
Yeah, but there's no concept of appeal per se by a din Torah.
Okay, again, if you're talking Tayela's factor and Shimon is
Oh,
saying
okay,
it
fine.
because he feels, I don't know, is there appeal in a real Besdin? You got a Besdin? Sure. I'm just saying, again, we're not talking where
Okay,
we're going into the Toelis.
okay.
Vez, in Ruven Gina Shimon Bifnei Shnayim, if Ruven was Megane degraded, disgraced Shimon in front of two people, Va'ava Echad Mehem al Isur Achis V'gilas Atav Shimon, and one of the two went and told Shimon what Reuven said about him. Alpha Pika and still Yizor Hasheni, the second one, should be careful. Show the guys of the Shimon should not tell Shimon. Post came in who Matim Sadavi Yosef. And certainly, if the second one will elaborate more that it's also, but not Rechon I guess because you're more upset when you hear it from two people than you hear it from one person. So good for this that the second person's coming and telling him, stokes the fire a little more. And he says, and certainly if the second person's elaborating more about what it said, below me by him who Mavin Mishimon, Shadayin Mustapik was there. He says, and certainly it's Rechilas if he understands from Shimon that he wasn't convinced that Reuven said that. He heard it from one person, not convinced. And Shimon Shalai, for example, how could he know? Shimon asked this second guy, is it true what your friend told me? That Reuven said this and this about me in front of you guys. So you see that he's not convinced. Now, if you say yes, then you're convincing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Bavadi also the Gam said. He's certainly not allowed to say yes. But even Mistam, he should not tell Shimon what Reuven said, by repeating it. He's strengthening the sinner. Should believe by Reuven that he has now one Reuven. She's it's a yoiser. That it'll be more accepted. Shishma pi shnayim. Nishim hayishem rakum pi echad. And therefore, it's usher. And that's even if you're repeating it word for word. That's what he said. וגם פעמים שיבוא גם כן למריבה את זה, הידי זה השני שנסר הרחילס מחודש. And also sometimes, since he heard it from the first guy, he let go. He forgot about it in the meantime, and now you're stoking the fire by bringing it up again. So certainly rechilas. Let's say you just said rechilas, and now you want to do tshuva. Ain't like takona. Says the Chavetz Chaim, there's no takona. So you go to that person, is said rechilas about, and appease him. And then after there's no more bein adam l'chaver, then you have to do tshuva bein adam l'makom. Over alav deloy sedek rocha b'amecha. Prati dina v'kamoy b'lashon har leo b'chelakav kal dal tzifri peis ayin chom v'ayin b'mer mayim chayim. Okay, and that there seems to be a machlokes the Chavetz Chaim and others, maybe Shmiras Salanta, about in a case where someone is not aware of the fact. He's not aware of the fact. What's the story? He is not aware. You want to do tshuva, but if you tell him what you said, right, he doesn't know that you said bad about him, right? What you did. If you go and tell him now, it's going to make things worse, not better. So are you still mechuyev because you have to try to appease him? Or if it's going to make things worse, then you don't have to tell him. I think there's a machlokes the Chavetz Chaim and Rabbi Salanta about that. Okay. All right, let's go do some Shmiras haLashon. Okay. Let's learn some Shmiras haLashon. We were up to Shar Tuvuna, Perek Zayin, where he quotes a Zoyar, Ches Tevis. Yeah, what are we talking about here? We're talking about the tremendous caution a person should have from being Malamed Chayiv on another Jew, and tremendous char if you're Malamed Tzchus, and he brought examples of the Nevi'im that spoke negatively about Klal Yisrael, and they got punished. So it says in the Zohar Kodesh, Amar Rebbe Kiva, Afa Gav Yahave Tzadika Rabba Mikol Alma. You're the biggest tzaddik in the world. V'yema Bisha Kankuch Abricho, and you say something bad in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Pevish, for example, Yisloin and Chas V'Shalom al Kadosh Baruch Hu. You'll complain against a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Or Dalutron, you saw, or you'll say Lashon Hara on a Jew. On Sagim in Kulan. Your punishment is greater than all. We haven't found a greater tzaddik than Eliyahu Navi in all the generations from the Alma the Lutrana Yisrael. And because he said Lashon Hara Klal Yisrael, which I assume he's referring to what he had quoted earlier yesterday, that Eliyahu Navi said, he said, we had it yesterday, I think.
Urei Achi Militzin.
What's that?
It's in the Tana de Eliyahu?
Yeah.
No, that's about.
No. So he had said that Eliyahu Navi was called to Shemayim, and Elisha took over because he had said something negative. Maybe it wasn't yesterday. This year, Moshe Rabbeinu, Dolish. Somewhere we had that. I don't remember where. Okay. So it says the Zohar, since he said Daluchana, you saw the Chsiv V'chulu, etc. Bashata Avesh Sage Kamei. At that moment, in the Hebrew it says Chota Harbe Lefana. He sinned greatly. Toch Hazeh Maksive. Take a look and see what it says. V'yabet Inema Rishois of Ugas Ritzofim. He saw by his head a cake of Ritzofim, a Mar Ritzofim, and the Gemara, the Zohar says, this is what is fitting for the person to eat that said Lashon Hara on my children. And that's Ritzofim is rat peh. Remember, we had that way at the beginning. Yeah. Right? Omer Yitzchak loizos el yomi shamat shenishbal v'nei kodesh baruch hu l'haris chutzim shoysotam. Yitzchak said that Eliyahu did the tshuva, and he didn't leave there until he swore to Kodesh Baruch Hu that he'll always speak up for Klal Yisrael, speak for their merit. Misha Isis Chus, who makdim va'imach Kodesh Baruch Hu kach v'kach osa achshav pleni. He comes and he says to Kodesh Baruch Hu, whenever someone does something good, he comes to Kodesh Baruch Hu and he says, tells him that's what that person did. Ve'in azaz misham at yichtavu schusei the gavra. And Eliyahu doesn't leave until they write down that chus. So because in Nuchal Leroy's, from all this we can summarize and see as good as the here is how careful you have to be not to speak bad about Klal Yisrael. A person always accustom himself to speak about their positive actions. And for doing that, he'll be beloved in front of Hashem. As the Gemara says in Yoma, he was Ma'or Schus for Kaiso Heshav Kadosh Baruch Hu. Mihu Zeh Shem Lav Schutz Abonai Vayaleo Lagoy. Right, bring him into the parking, into the inner wherever. Avroza Ayin Sham. We find this in many places. Umehem, one of them is that he himself spoke up for Klal Yisrael a lot. It says the Rebbeinu Shalom. Ve'ino b'anyein of riva rivenu. Because we'll see our suffering and to our battles, our quarrels, v'yalel b'anyeinu l'fanecha, and let our shame come up in front of you, because of what all that's being done to us at all, constantly. And remember how many families are without a parnasa, and yet they learn Torah. See how many poor people there are, Jews, that the goyim, it says in the parentheses, b'misim va'arnonius, through their taxing, so to speak, they're pulling off their flesh. And yet they continue learning Torah. I don't know what that refers to. They don't know between their right and their left, but still, elders, they wake up early and go to the shuls. They lay in the shuls and base moders. And they just wait for your Yeshua. Remember the bris you made with the early generations. With the Ovis. You wrote in our Torah, in your Torah. your brother falls, umoti yodai imcha v'chazakta. He's talking that he lost his parnasa. You should help him strengthen him. Perish l'chein gamat b'tachzik yedin l'banim l'oilam. The owner was saying, you are that in the dirt, and therefore you should also strengthen us, so we never fall. Avisha b'shmayim zachor kama piskim v'kama sumim yesh b'em b'Yisrael. How many piseach is someone I think who limps, and how many blind people there are. Shein them mezainis, they don't have food. I feel hockey noisim scharlim alamdim, they still pay their rebbes. Sheyilmudum b'neim Torah. Avisha b'shmayim zachor Yisrael shem kinyanecha shamer oilam. They're your acquisitions since the beginning. Shenema halayhu avicha kanecha. Vayima Hashem kinanani reishis darka from the beginning. Avisha b'shmayim zachor kamal monis v'yisayim sheish b'em b'Yisrael. So you see how Navi went to bat for Klal Yisrael. How every Jew has to be ma'or, awaken rachamim in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the Jews. With similar things to find the schus, find the positive aspect of the Yidden. The Misha Deb is Manenus Hamatzav Adalsha Yisrael. V'afapikin Yesh Baruch Hashem Harbe Lomdei Torah Umekayim Mitzvahs Harbe Machzikei Torah V'Gam Lechesed V'Yisad Tzlaka B'Chol Ever Pina. At all points, you have so many people learning Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs and supporting Torah and doing Chesed, even though the matzav in Klal Yisrael, says the Chavos Chaim at that point, was so difficult. They're poor, they didn't have a lot. That's being Ma'ir Rachamim for Klal Yisrael. Okay,